hello, and thank you so much for joining me for the podcast of the True Power from Within. I do pray each and every day that this podcast touches you in the most amazing and encouraging way. So today I had a whole different um, message that I thought that I was, coming with, but as I was reading the scripture, most of you know that we have these particular scriptures that we have that we repeat. We put them on T-shirts. We are always saying them. We hear them in church. We hear them outside of church. We post them. We see them on Pinterest, and we do all of these different things, right? And we stick with that verse. But me, I like to know what comes before and what comes after, right? And so I feel like God's kind of given me a series in the sense of the last few podcasts that I have done. The first one was about vision, right? We talked about vision. We talked about healing. We talked about growth, right? And so today I had called this message When It Comes Full Circle, right? But as I was reading the scripture and I kept reading it over and over and over again, I began to see that there was something before it and there was something after it. And as I kept reading, there was a particular word that kept popping up. And I'm going to be coming out of Jeremiah 29, right? And we know verse 11 very well. But I want to start from verse 10 and I want to go to verse 14. All right. So Jeremiah 29, verse 10 says, "What is this? For this is what the Lord says, when 70 years of Babylon are complete, I will attend to you and will confirm my promise concerning you to restore you to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, for this is the Lord's declaration. Plans for your well-being, not for disaster, to give you future and a hope. You will call to me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all of your heart. I will be found by you. This is the Lord's declaration. And I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and places where I banished you. This is the Lord's declaration. I will restore you to the place from which I deported you." So I don't know if you caught that, but there's a word that is constantly repeating over and over in these particular verses, and that is restore. And, I was coming with a full circle message, and God says, no, come with a restored message, right? So I'm reading and I'm like, okay, restore, restore, restore. And he's like, you talked about vision, right? You've talked about vision. You've talked about healing. You've talked about growth, right? So talk about restore. What has God done in your life to restore your life, right? We talk about restoration. We see restoration, right? When we have an old house, what do? We tear everything out and we restore it, right? And it's really funny because we see these particular things happening in our life, right? Where we see where God is giving us a vision. He's giving us, he's offering us his healing power, right? He also brings us to a stage of growth, right? Because we have to grow. Like once we heal, we begin to grow, right? And God ultimately restores us. He restores our lives. He restores our vision. He restores our purpose. He restores everything that he has for us in this life. But I just hope that I can give this to you the exact same way that I heard it, because I'm going to tell you it was really powerful. But I want to give you an example. Okay. So, in restoration, I feel like it comes with purpose, right? It goes hand in hand with purpose, because when God restores us, right, and he has a vision for our life, we heal, we grow, restore, and purpose, right? But in order to have purpose, you have to have purpose first, then have a vision, right? Because if you don't know what your purpose is, it's hard for you to get a vision about where you're going. And here's an example. Let's just say, some people go to the store just to walk around. I go with a purpose, right? Because I have a purpose as to why I'm going. I create a list. I get a vision, right? So if I was to not have a vision, say, okay, my vision is to feed my family for the entire week. So my purpose to go to Walmart is to get the food to feed my family for the whole week, right? So we've got a purpose, then we can get a vision about what we want to cook, what we need for our home, so on and so forth, right? And it's no different in our lives, right? Because God has that vision for us. We have that, that God vision. And he brings us through some things. We go through some trauma or an addiction or prison. We go through all of these divorce, breakups. We go through a grieving. We go through all of these things. And ultimately, God will restore us in those things. And it's amazing to me that he says here that the Lord's declaration is, I will restore you to the place from which I deported you. And I see this in my life very clearly, right? I see this in my life so clear because, God had the vision, right? I didn't have the vision, but God had the vision. He had the purpose. He had the plan, right? All along. But sometimes when we get into the process of healing and restoring and purpose and vision, right, we kind of get lost in the mix because we're like, well, I don't know exactly what that purpose is. I don't know what that vision is, right? And so we get caught up and we begin to start questioning, like, God, I feel like I'm going around in circles. I'm going here, but then you take me here, and I'm going back here again, right? And I feel like in our lives, when we really gain the knowledge of our purpose, right? And we can get a vision, we can write it down, we can make it plain, right? But God will restore us, but then bring us back to the very place in which he deported us. And let me give you an example. I have a family member that was struggling with suicide and was struggling with, dealing with the past, right? But we both went through the same person, basically, okay? And so we were traumatized and hurt and had a pain associated with this same particular person. And when I tell you that the healing came from me, but then God brought me full circle because I was going to need to stand up for that person in their healing, right? So God restored me and brought me back to the very place in which he deported me from. My husband is a good example of this. He was homeless. He, was living on the streets. But then when God restored him, he took him back to that same place which he was there when he was homeless, right? And he brings God's word and he feeds those people of the same place and where he used to be, right? God says, I'm going to restore you in the places from which I deported you. And sometimes we think, why am I in this same place again? I've come a million miles, right? And I find this in my life too. Just I talked about this on I think my last podcast, is that it was funny because you or I have been out of prison since 2012, right? My conviction was in 2009, and we're looking for another house to rent. But the thing is that I cannot rent from certain companies because they don't believe in second chances. If you make a mistake, you wear that mistake for the rest of your life, is pretty much what some of these companies, right, or property management companies or jobs or whatever that don't believe in second chances, you wear that label on you, right? But when God says he will restore you to the very place in which I deported you, how am I sitting here today talking to you and doing a podcast? Not because I feel like I'm qualified, but it's because God has brought me back to the place in which he deported me from. To share your story, to to share the vision, to share the purpose, right? God brings us through certain things in our life in order to get us back to the very place in which He brought us from, on purpose, for to help the next person heal, or to be a good example for your family or your children or whatever it may be. And it's funny because I have some family in town right now, and I was talking with one of them last night, and we were talking about when I got in trouble when I was 17, and that was the first time that I'd ever got in trouble with the law. And I had used my grandparents' credit cards and checks, right? And I didn't know, but this particular person was actually the one that helped them fight all of that, right? And, she said to me, she said, it's funny because you never mentioned in your book the other person that was involved. And even though I knew that person was involved, right? I trusted God to restore me in those situations, right? Because it didn't matter who was involved. I was responsible, right? And as I look back, I could use that as a place to be upset or down or frustrated or angry again. But instead, I just give God praise because I know He restored me from that. He healed me from that, right? Because at that time, I'm like, it reinforced to me that I was not good enough, right? That this person did not really care about me because here I am 17 and I'm sitting in jail, in big girl jail, and this person was involved, but yet nothing ever happened to them. And it's because it was not meant, their purpose was not meant there, right? It wasn't meant for them to pay for that mistake. It was just a piece of my journey from which now I can talk about. And I'm hoping that this makes sense because I feel like I'm all over the place. But I just feel like God is telling me today that, He's trying to restore you. But you're getting frustrated, right? You're getting frustrated because you feel like you've kind of gone in a circle, right? You feel like you've healed from something, but then it comes back around. And it's just God saying that, listen, I've restored you in that area, right? But there's a purpose in that place for you. There's a vision in that place for you. Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to trust me in the process, right? Because I've given you the vision because you have the purpose, right? I've healed you. I have given growth in those particular areas. So now that I can send you back from where I deported you so that you can help restore the next person. I think that when you start a business, right? And when I was doing coaching with a business coach, your brand, of course, you are your brand, but your brand has a personality, right? So we had to choose a couple of words that demonstrated what our brand personality was. And it literally just came right out of my mouth. And it was restore and recreate, right? Because that is my brand, because that is what has happened in my life, right? God restored me. He recreated my life. And now He is putting me back into the place in which He deported me from. Not for the negative, but for the positive, because there's a vision, there's hope there, right? I can spread hope, I can spread courage, I can spread my story and my testimony in this place now from which He deported me from. So I can go back to the addicts and talk about being an addict and how God changed my life. I can go back to the people that have been incarcerated and who are struggling with getting back into society. I can go back there now and I can talk to them about that because I have been restored, right? I have been recreated. I don't see now when my family member going through, mental health issues and things of that nature, when I see that, it takes me back, but yet I can help restore and recreate someone's story because I've been in that exact same place. Where you're at right now is not by mistake, because God does not make mistakes. It's not by mistake where you are right now. If you feel like you've been in this exact same place 20, 30, or 40 times, there's something in that place that God is trying to show you. There's something in that spot that you're supposed to learn, right? There's something in that spot that God is trying to show you, because it has to do with purpose. It has to do with vision. It has to do with healing, recreating, and restoring. He says, and I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and places where I banished you. Remember those people that told you that you'd never come out? Remember those people that told you that you would never change, that you would be nothing, that nobody would ever, listen to you. You're not qualified. You're never going to be anything but an addict or a convict or anything like that. Can I tell you something? Where are you now? Where are you now? Maybe you're sober. Maybe you're just getting sober. Maybe you just come out of a divorce or a bad relationship, or, maybe you lost your job and God's trying to show you something different. God is in the restoring business. And he says, I know the plans that I have for you is to prosper you, right? But yet before he prospers, he restores, right? He restores. So if you have an old house and you restore that old house, what are you doing? You're recreating it, right? Because usually when we restore an old home, we have a vision about what we want that home to look like. And it's no different than God. When he's restoring you, right? He's recreating the story of your life so that you can go back from the places that he deported you from, or that you were banished from, because he's now qualified you to be in that place. He's qualified you, and he has restored you and recreated you so that you can go back. But sometimes we get back in that place and we're like, God, why am I here? We question the very thing that God is trying to do in our life, right? We say, nope, I can't go back here because this is not for me. This is not, you brought me from here and I can't go back here. But God is saying, I have recreated you and I'm restoring you, right? Because sometimes he needs to show us something in that moment that we need to learn. When I was talking with my family member that was going through mental health issues, I got angry again. I got angry because I'm seeing it's the same story being recreated in this person, right? But something beautiful that happened is God sent me before him. God sent me before him. He gave me the healing before him. He gave me the restoration before him. So now when this family member is in this particular spot and I find myself standing there with them, I have the things to say to help him, right? For healing. And I did just that because I talked to them on the phone one day, and then all I could think about all day was what would I have wanted someone to say to me when I was in that spot. See, sometimes God doesn't bring you back to a place for you. He brings you back to a place for someone else. Right? It could be for your kids. It could be for your husband. It could be for your sisters or brothers or aunts or parents or a total stranger. But God will send you back into a place in which he has restored you and banished you, right? He deported you from a place so that he could heal you, right? So in those moments where you feel like you were in the wilderness, God was restoring you, right? And he's brought you out for purpose. He's brought you out because he has a vision for your life. He has plans for your future, right? He's giving you hope. But when we get into a tight spot and we say, God, we've been here before, and why do I keep finding myself in this position? You have to think about, God, who are you? Who am I here for? What is it that you're trying to show me in this season, right? You've been covering me and protecting me from all of this stuff. And now I've been healed, and now you're bringing me back? Why? Because there's vision in it. There's restoration in it. There's a blessing in it. There's a promised land in it. But we get so caught up in, why am I here? Why have I come back here? God, why am I going full circle? We spend so much time questioning the purpose that we miss out on what God is trying to do for us. We miss out on the blessing because we're so caught up in why we're here. You know, I made a promise to myself that I would live intentionally every day, right? I would get on this podcast Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and, you know, I would allow God to use me. But I don't feel qualified for this, right? I don't have 1 million followers or thousands of subscribers. I still sit here at the same place before I hit the live button every single time, and I question myself, like, can you do this? Like today, I was like somewhere else, right? What I wanted to talk about was somewhere else, and then I kept seeing this word restore, 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 restore in these verses, and I said, okay, let's talk about it. But to me, I don't feel like I'm making much sense. But God says it will go to the ears in which who needs to hear it. You know, I didn't call you to be perfect, right? I didn't call you to be perfect. I didn't tell you that you had to do a podcast that was absolutely perfect using big words and, you know, laying out a whole summary. He said, you're speaking from your heart. You're speaking from experience, because I've qualified you in this space when it comes to recreating and restoring. You're the person. So what I'm encouraging you to do today is, when you find yourself in the same spot that you felt like God had brought you out of, look for what is in that moment. Look for the opportunity in the moment. Is this opportunity the reason I'm here? Is it to help someone else? Am I here for an opportunity because is there something for me to learn in this? Am I here because God needs to show me something? Am I here because I'm not quite healed or quite where I want to be yet in that particular area, and there's still something that God's trying to show me? And in these verses, all I keep seeing is restore, restore, restore. And I feel like somebody today has been praying to God that they would restore something in their lives. That you've been crying out, God, I need you to restore this area of my life. Maybe it's the area of love. Maybe it's the area of vulnerability. Maybe it's the area of self-worth or self-love or negative self-talk, right? You need to be restored. Maybe your heart has been hardened because you've been hurt. But God is saying today, I am here to give you a future and a hope. And that He says, I will restore you to the places from which I deported you. So just because He's taken something away doesn't mean He's not going to restore that area of your life. But for a season, we already know I talk about plants all the time, but for a season, He may need to prune you. For a season, He may need to cover you. For a season, you may feel like you're in the valley, right? That you were once on the mountaintop and now you find yourself back in the valley, or you're going through a storm, right? And you feel like the waves are just crashing on your boat and you're like, when is this storm ever going to stop? And he says, my plans for you is for a future and hope. And it says, I will restore you to the place in which I deported you from. So if you feel like God has taken and deported you from so many different things, right, in your life, and you feel like at this moment, I'm back in the same place that I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 4 years ago, have hope to know that God is restoring you in those places. He didn't bring you back to that for no reason. He didn't bring you back to that to hurt you or, for you to get depressed or have anxiety or for you to stop praying or to lose hope. He brought you back to that place because he says, I need to restore you in an area right now. I need to cover you. I need to prune you because I have so much greater inside of you than what what you're believing at this point in time. So I pray that this hits the ears that need to hear it today, because I feel like I'm all over the place. But God just kept saying somebody is asking for restoration in their life right now. And he says, I'm going to give you the restoration, but there's something in here that I need you to know. There's something in here that you need to see. There's something in here that you need to feel. And I need you to trust in me and believe in me and pray right now, every day. Pray harder than you've ever prayed. I know you've been up at night. I know you've had tears that you've cried at night because you're crying out to me because you're in a position that you say, I've been here before and I don't understand why I'm back here. God says, I'm restoring you. I'm recreating, right? Because God restores and he recreates. Just like just like I was talking about, a house, right? If you have an old house and you want to go and restore this old house, you have the vision, right? You've got the purpose, which is to restore the house. But as you're restoring, you're also recreating. And that's the exact same thing that God does in our life. He restores us and then he recreates something much more beautiful in our lives. When I went to prison, I was broken. I was bitter. I was angry. I was addicted. I was a bad mom. Like the list can go on. No self-worth. I was so critical of myself. I hated myself. I'm telling you. And he put me in that place, right? And I was questioning, God, why am I here? Like I knew, like physically why I was there, literally why I was there. But I'm like, why am I here? And it's because he was restoring me. Because when I got out, he was going to recreate something much more beautiful than when I went in. So today, wherever you are in this moment, whatever season that you're in, whether you're in the restoring stage or the recreating stage, I'm saying be patient with God, because right now he's restoring something. He's teaching you something. He's showing you something, right? And we already know that his promise is to give us a future and a hope. But he says, I will restore you. I am restoring you right now, so that when I restore you, I can recreate that beautiful life, or I can recreate that beautiful relationship, or I can recreate those bad kids. Because, but he says, I can restore you and recreate something much more beautiful. But I need you to trust me and believe me, even in the wilderness. I need you to trust me and believe me in the valley. These are the moments that we got to pray a little harder, believe a little harder, have a little more hope and a little more courage and a little more strength, because in our weakness, he is made strong. So can you trust him for that strength? Can you trust him that he's restoring and recreating your life? I don't know who needs to hear this today, but God is saying, you're on the restoration journey. You're on the right path. Keep believing and keep praying and keep having faith, because I have something much more beautiful in store for you. As soon as I get it restored, I'm going to recreate it for my glory. But continue to read my word and know that all of my promises are not in vain. Just because you don't see me working, or you don't hear me, or you feel like you're in the same spot, I have not left you. I'm still very much present here in your life, but I'm working on some things. So trust me and believe and pray, because I'm working on some things. So today, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I pray that it hits the right ears. I pray that you get into agreement with God and know that He is restoring you and recreating something so beautiful in your life. And I just want you to know today that if nobody has told you that they love you, I love you, and so does God. And I hope you have an amazing day. Bye bye.